Chapter 9, rook against mine piece. I want to start with rook against knight, and even there a bit earlier, as the pawnless ending most often arises from the fight rook against pawn or pawns. Musalov Schuch is a case in point. White wins here. Black must promote to a knight due to the mating thread and must sacrifice the bishop to free the knight. Okay, and usually the pawnless endgame as a guideline is a draw if the knight is near its king. But there are two non-trivial exceptional cases which you should know. If the knight is on a1 or b2, then the rook has very good winning chances. With the knight on b2, even the Arabs 1000 years ago knew in their studies that the rook has non-trivial wins. The rules of the game were a bit different then, of course, but rook and knight fortunately already moved in the same way, and so the old results are, most of the old results are still valid today and were confirmed by the endgame table bases. Yeah, and okay, and the second case is if king and knight can be separated permanently, then the rook usually wins. Okay, we will see here in a few examples, but I also advise you to play it against Fritz or friend to get a better feeling for this hunting, knight hunting, and for the knight geometry and the way to restrict and dominate the knight. Yeah, and this is a 1 here for white, because the knight is on such a bad circuit. Yeah, knight a3 loses immediately, knight e1 loses immediately, so knight e3 is relatively best. And now the shortest win may not be found over the board if you don't know it. Humans most often play king d3, this wins as well, but rook h4 is quicker, because if the knight wants to rejoin its king, then yeah, the knight is on this very unfortunate square and directly dominated and pinned and lost. And this is the reason why rook h4 is squeezed. Yeah. And here it is, of course, a trivial win, direct win. So this is the best move, but in human games, most often, of course, this is played also winning. But now, care must be exercised. What is black's threat and how to prevent it? Black threatens rook, knight b4 check, knight a2, and then it's a draw. Then the knight rejoins the king on a circuit which holds the draw. So this was a mistake. Now it was a draw. The position is drawn. White won later, but we will see. Rook h4 to stop prophylactically knight b4 wins. And now start the hunt. And this really maybe should be played. I can give a sample line, but playing it against Fritz or a friend will give you a better feeling. The knight in this typical geometrical domination formation, king and knight are permanently separated for, yeah. And so it should be lost according to the guideline, and this is indeed the case. Zugzwang, typical weapon against the knight. Domination, only f6 is open, and on f6 now, white's king is in the knight check shadow. Very well, very good geometrical domination formation, which is reached here. There are, of course, many more geometrical formations with this king, knight, and rook, but I will not go on to explain them, and then we would. But just play it, feel yourself. This is the only way to really develop an intuition for this, and this will not only help here, but in general to better understand the knight when fighting against a rook or here against the king. It will really help you not to run into so many knight forks or nightmares. Then it will only be a nightmare for the knight. Game over. The hunt has trapped the victim. Yeah, so really this you should play against Fritz until Fritz always loses the lost positions. Okay. Well, in the game, after rook f2, oh, excuse me, this was the wrong arrow key. In the game, after rook f2, now the knight can rejoin the king, but this time on a better circuit. This is now a draw. You can see this as if the last, okay, c2, c1, knight check. Okay, black would have queened, but in principle, these cases are all drawn if it's not a rook's pawn. But here the king is in the corner. It is a draw, but care must be exercised. Take your time and eliminate all moves but one. The only move which cannot be eliminated is knight e2. And it is indeed the reason why it cannot be eliminated is because it draws. It looks a bit, it looks close, but white has no way to tighten the net somehow. The defense holds. The knight is the best friend of the king, after all, and this is valid here. Somehow, the rook cannot outmaneuver the defense. While knight a2 loses. King b3, and now the sharp endgame weapon Zugzwang, which is so often used against a knight, destroys black's house. And now, of course, it is black's undoing. This is king is in the corner, and so without one. So, what are the guidelines? What you should know? If the knight is near the king, then the pawnless endgame rook against knight usually is drawn, or if it can come close or reach the king. The only two important non-trivial exceptions are on a1 and b2 or in the other corners respectively. Then the rook has good chances to win, and with a knight on b2 there are even very non-trivial wins which need many moves. Yeah, and if this was the first case, and the second case, if king and knight can be permanently separated, then the rook usually wins. And please practice this against Fritz until you are sure that you always win the hand. This will also help you to better understand the knight geometry and the restriction of a knight. And yeah, you will learn not to run into knight forks and so on. And this will not only help you in the endgame, but of course in all phases of the royal game, as the knight seems to be the most difficult piece for most humans to handle.